Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. This is the Committee of the Whole, Public Works, Environmental Services and Facilities for the January 15th, 2020 meeting. It is 6:30. We have a quorum. However, I've just been informed that the Deputy Mayor Deschamps is running just a little bit late. So he will be making an appearance, and he will be here. Could I have approval of the agenda, please?
So moved.
I have a mover. Do I have a seconder? Mr. Packwood, seconding. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carried. Thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof?
None by me.
None. Hearing none. Thank you. Number 4, business arising from the previous Committee of the Whole meeting minutes, if any. Hearing none. Thank you. Moving on. We have no delegations or presentations tonight. Now, number 6 is a discussion item, and it's down here as soil sampling and disposal costs, Dundas Street, and I've been asked to speak to that. This has to do with Habitat for Humanity, the new build they're doing in Cardinal on Dundas Street, which is progressing extremely well. At the moment, they're only waiting for windows to come in, and then they'll be able to get heat inside and things like that. However, during the construction, it was found that some soil that they had dug out for the foundation, or dug around for the foundation, had been contaminated. The soil was sent off to a lab, and I have to apologize. I did have the 16-page report. I was going to print it off, and for some reason I lost the email. It came in my phone, and for some reason I lost it. However, the long and short of the report was that it was found to be fuel oil, and they were ordered to have it disposed of to Moose Creek, which they did. I believe it was Lloyd McMillan who they contracted to move it, which he did, and it's gone. However, what they would like council to consider is the cost of trucking the material to Moose Creek. Being a charitable organization, they're looking for help with this, and I believe the cost was in the neighborhood of $1,000 to get rid of this. So there's a $1,000 bill out there. When I spoke to the people involved with Habitat, I did mention to them that when we were doing some preliminary work on the lot, we did the water and sewer for them at our expense, and that was, and because it's the village of Cardinal, that expense is picked up by the users only of the system, not the entire township. And I explained that to them, and I sort of, because I know them quite well, because I do volunteer at Habitat, I sort of said to them, boys, I think you're asking for a lot here, considering you got the water free. But I did say to them that I would bring it to council for council's consideration. So if you have any questions, I'll try and answer them for you. Councillor?
After they dispose of this, did they get a bill of health? Do they have a certificate from the Ministry of Environment?
As far as I know, the only instructions that they were given was to remove it, and that would be sufficient.
Is this through the Ministry of Environment?
That I'm sorry, Councillor, I can't answer that. Whoever came and inspected the property rose the issue.
I'd feel better if you could find out who it is, Ministry of Environment, and if they did give them a certificate.
I can get back to them.
That that property is clear now.
Yeah. I can certainly do that.
I mean, $1,000. It's truthfully for $1,000 to clean up the spill. find that very,
Well, what
very,
happened-
very, very cheap.
What happened, which I believe what happened is there was a fire at the previous house.
Yeah,
and there
the
was
oil
an-
went in the ground.
And there was an oil tank.
Yeah.
And it probably ruptured,
But I'm just saying,
yeah,
I find it very, 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 that's why I'm a little concerned to say,
okay,
if we had the bill of health, that that land was cleared by the Ministry of Environment, I don't have a problem with $1,000, if you want the truth. You know, the health and that, because I just think it's cheap, but I don't wanna get into a mess where it's gonna be ongoing, and that's why I would like some kind of certificate from the Ministry of Environment that it's clear.
I can get back to them with that concern, of course.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
So can we get from the CAO through the chair to the CAO and perhaps to Director of Operations, what is the value of the, and I'm talking about full value, including men, time, and equipment, for the installation of the sewer and water at our expense? What would be the approximate value of that contribution?
I think it was around $9,600, I believe.
$9,600.
$600, yes.
So that is a pretty substantial donation
Pretty good chunk.
on top of the, now they purchased the lot from us on a tax sale basis, if I recall, or was that correct, or did we vest it in our name and then sell it to them for taxes?
Through the chair, yes, the property was vested in the township after a failed tax sale, and it was offered through a tender process, just enough money actually as a minimum bid to recoup the township's cost for legal fees, back taxes, and whatever little bit of money we had done some demolition and all that stuff on the property too.
So continuing on, what that means then is that we advertise it for tax sale. As it's just been reported, the tax sale failed, so we then vest in our name. And did they come along with the first offer at the tax due price? Or the amount?
There, if I may, through that process, their offer was slightly higher than the minimum bid. I believe the minimum bid was somewhere, I'm going by my memory, somewhere around 18,000, and they bid 20,000.
22?
No, it was
Plenty.
20,500 or something like that. So if you recall, the action item that staff brought forward with respect to the water line was that we had excess funds of a couple $1,000, because they had paid more than the minimum. And then the remainder, so of Mr. Shaw's 9,600, roughly 2,000 was covered through the sale of the land. So the remainder, roughly 7,600, was from the township's funds, from the water system funds.
Anything else?
No, I'll pass for now. I'd like to hear some more comment.
Counselor?
Well, too bad they had to pay $1,000 to get rid of it, but I don't think we wanna get into a situation where we start covering costs of rehabilitating soil, whether it's a charity organization or not. We got a lot of other charity organizations too that could run into the same problem. We got a process where we donate towards nonprofit groups and stuff, that they can apply for grants at the start of the year and stuff, and I don't think we can get into this of starting to cover costs of people along the way.
Mr. Eckwood?
Councilor Bilbo brought up a very good point. That's pretty cheap to get rid of an oil thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't feel very comfortable with it, for just my experience dealing with that kind of situation with the Ministry of Environment. And I presume the building is built, and it's got weeping tiles on it. And if this ground is contaminated, it's gonna get into the storm sewer system. And there could be all kinds of problems. I think there should be a little bit more clarity to this whole situation, to be honest with you.
Oh, boy. I know exactly what you're saying, but, and so the questions that I would come to would be, you know, at what point did they determine that this material was contaminated? Was it before the foundations went in? I'm assuming that there was, as a result of the activity, there was a pile of material
Correct.
someplace
Correct. It was.
that was somehow tested for some reason.
Correct.
And does that pile represent the extent of what they found? I mean, it could very well represent the full extent of what was there. And so I guess that's what, and you know, as far as Ministry of the Environment giving it all clear on the property, they're not gonna do that unless the entire property is tested. And they'll make us test it. I don't wanna get into it.
Well, not us, because they own it.
Yeah, I know, but
That's
do we wanna expose them
No,
to
well-
a full environmental assessment?
The trouble is, we don't, I'd rather have them owning it than us right now. Because you're right, you know, I think it's the beginning of something that could turn into, I've seen this happen before, many times. And the 1,000 turns into 100,000.
The problem is, we sold them the land.
But, as is, right?
Yeah, as is,
So-
I agree. I
There we
agree.
go.
Yeah.
All those are as is, where it is, so we're all right that way. And why would we do a test hole? They should have did the test hole if they're interested in buying it first, so, if they're concerned.
I just think we need to stay completely away from it.
I'm glad you lost your email. Don't try to find it.
It, I'm sure it can be resent.
Yeah, I'm just, you know, when you get into that,
Sure.
you don't know where the end is, that's all.
So, yeah, so. Okay, so, we've got mixed feelings here. I'm going to ask staff, well, just a moment. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna suggest a workaround here. And my idea of a workaround would be to have Habitat for Humanity, as a charitable organization, make a request to us during our process that we use to grant grants to various municipalities, to various organizations. Now, we've been trying to concentrate on youth groups and recreation and those kinds of things, but maybe knowing this background, if we had an application from them during that process where we allocate the 10 or 15,000, whatever's in the budget, maybe we could show them a little bit of consideration at that stage. And I'm not saying that we would or that we wouldn't, but it might be something that we could recommend to them.
They look after it and then apply. I understand.
And don't ever mention why they're applying.
Of course.
Through the chair,
Yeah,
they
public
have to
meeting.
list.
Public meeting.
There's
do have to list it, though.
There's specific criterias to the application forms for the community grants and donations program. They have to specifically list what that money will be used for in the coming months. Report back to us in a financial statement how it was used. There's multiple criteria, and for covering soil sampling and removal, it really doesn't fit any one of our categories.
Well,
I think we need to stay, as I said, I think we need to stay away from it, whether it's a nonprofit organization or not, it's a privately owned piece of property. Now, we're gonna be transferred into a privately owned.
It will be.
Personally, I don't think
Yes,
we
it
wanna
will
get
be.
involved and start to get into funding any kind of work on private properties, so.
how did they get their mortgages? Did they go to a financial institute or no? Like, how does these people get these mortgages?
I don't know, they're in threatening a big lawsuit now against them for Habitat for not supplying 0% mortgages, that they're millions of dollars in the hole. That they-
Yeah, I heard that, yes.
Because this could just turn, you know, I'm with you. I mean,
Then maybe the best thing we should, then just as a suggestion, maybe the best thing we can do is just stay right away from it.
be a real good suggestion, yeah. Real good.
I said I would get back to them. I can get back to them with the feeling that council is not interested.
Be a little bit more charitable in your way or trade.
Well, because I know them so well, I think I can say it in those terms.
Just a point. Did the township not already give them $9,600 of sewer and water?
Oh, yes, it was a free charge.
That's pretty good.
Yep. Yep.
Suggest you move on, Mr. Chairman?
Okay, so that is dead. What I'm gathering. Thank you. Okay, we're at seven, which is action and information items, and the first one on the list is the Cardinal Library Security, and I believe the CIO is going to speak to that. No problem.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So the library board raised a concern with regard to security at the facility. So the steps that have been taken so far is that the internet, free internet that was on 24/7 now shuts off at 10 p.m. through the overnight hours. Also, some additional lighting on the east side of the building has been installed. It's improved lighting. And our facilities manager has obtained some pricing with respect to a security system. And the cost is about $3,000. And the plan is to, under the building repair portion of the budget, just to have that security system installed. I believe that should substantially mitigate any kind of future issues.
I must say, I have paid attention to the light that is on the east side of the building, and it is wonderful, to say the least. Well lit. Questions?
Where's this $3,000 come from?
The building and repair portion for the building at the library, for the libraries in the township operating budget.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor?
So my question is the $3,000 is four cameras outside, 2 cameras inside. I guess my question is, does security necessarily have to include cameras? I mean, and it says they're hooked up to a recording DVR system. I mean, is the whole building and the exterior of the building not hooked up to our security provider, Falcon? Isn't Falcon's our security provider, are they not?
Yeah, there's no doubt that if there was a window break or a door breach, that it would alarm out.
Okay.
However, I think that the real issue was the activity in and around that building, and with the security cameras up, that should alleviate the pooling of activity on that, at least on that east side and the rear of the building. Should curb that.
Well, only if they know that there are cameras there.
Well, if we're going to install cameras, we have to display that the area is monitored.
There actually is, I believe, 2 cameras already in existence.
In the building?
Well, I believe,
That
I can't be 100% sure.
I'm not aware of any cameras
Oh,
that are
okay.
that are in place right now.
Okay, I could be wrong on that then. It's fine.
So I guess my question is cameras the only way to go? If it is, it's fair enough, I'm not gonna issue.
Councilor Dillabud, did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to know where it came from.
Okay, Councilor?
Yeah, so.
Or Deputy Mayor? Oh,
Sure.
sorry.
I
I thought John had his hand up.
I do after Bill, let
Okay.
Deputy Mayor go first.
Yeah, I really don't see any issue with it. I'm assuming it's not a new contract though with Falcon, it's just them upgrading the equipment that's there and adding that service to it, or no?
It would be in addition to what's there now.
In addition to what's
Yeah,
there.
with that security.
But no monthly fee with it or anything like that at all, just what it says in the document?
I believe it's as is in the document.
Counselor?
Well, my question was just what's the operating cost are gonna be, this, and what's the maintenance cost of it? I know cameras don't maintain themselves by any means, they're not a long life project. Many of the ones I've seen, they always require servicing all the time on them, so I think there is gonna be a ongoing cost with them, and when we discussed it, I thought we discussed it, was brought up damage being done on the outside, activity around the outside of the building, but I see we got 2 cameras inside the building, so what are we videoing inside the building really? If we got cameras on the outside telling us anybody's coming near it, what are we watching inside the building that we need cameras for? So we got staff in there all the time when the building's open, so.
There was an incident some time ago, several years ago, where there was I believe, some damage. I could be wrong, did a car go through the window, or did somebody break in? There was a break-in.
Yeah, I know, there was a break-in, they stole money off the money bear that the lodge had given them to auction off for the rink at the time, but that was a fault at the time that they corrected, because Falcon Security had a dead area in the building that no alarms went off because, but that was, I believe, corrected. I think our clerk can verify that, they corrected that at the time there and realigned their zoning in there, didn't they, Deborah, there, that was a fault at the time, they weren't lined up proper, and they adjusted that, so.
Through the chair, yes, Councillor Hunter is correct that there was an issue there that was corrected. However, having had, the issue was that with no camera, we had no way of knowing who had broken in. I mean, I think they did eventually catch the culprit, but, we have video surveillance on most of our township facilities, not this building, but certainly the arenas. And if council doesn't wish to have video surveillance on the library building, that's fine. We don't have to do that.
Gentlemen, nothing there, nothing around. There's no recommendation here, so I'll just poll everyone, either yay or nay would be fine. Mr. Bush?
Yeah.
That's carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're now down to 7B, the Fire Department Establishment Bylaw. There is a recommendation attached to this. The recommendation reads that committee recommend that council approve the updated Fire Department E&R bylaw, and it's 20 pages long. It made for some interesting reading. I believe Chief Moore, you're going to speak to the highlights on this? Or would you like to speak to the highlights?
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Chair. As stated in the action item, it's been a few years since this was updated. And it's based on the samples that were provided at the Essentials of Municipal Fire Protection seminar that most of council went through there in Maitland. I think it's very specific and very detailed compared to what we had, but I think it does represent our current levels of service. Some of the highlights that I included in my action item, there are definitions for different levels of membership so that we can tailor different people's responsibilities on training programs specific to what job they're going to do. The addition of a training officer to try to standardize training amongst the 2 stations, and the option for possibly a junior firefighter program in the future to help get some people involved in the fire service while they're young and hopefully become members when they become of age.
Questions? Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
Well, first of all, it was as a result of the seminar that the chief is referring to that I brought back quite a package and asked to have this bylaw looked at. And so I'd like to move the recommendation, but I would also like to ask a question and have it clarified prior to voting on this particular bylaw that we see in front of us. And I can see that there's been a tremendous amount of work being done to bring this bylaw to this format and to this degree of comprehensiveness. But my question is this, I think someplace it refers to the fact that the position of training officer has been added to the organizational chart. But I don't see in the document where it specifies the duties of the training officer. And so my question is, either the chief is the responsible for the training of the volunteers, or the training officer is responsible. And I read fairly quickly, and so I'll apologize if I missed it, but I read through the section on the fire chief responsibilities and authority, and I didn't see in that section where the chief is responsible for the training. So my question goes through the chair, something like this. Where in the document does it indicate who is responsible for the training? And I don't know where it might be in the document, I just didn't, and I read through it quickly, so I may have missed it.
Through the chair,
Certainly.
obviously, I'm responsible for everything in the end, and obviously, if we decide that, and we could fill a training officer position, I would still be responsible, but those duties would be delegated to the training officer, and their duties would be basically under Schedule B, Item 6. Lays out the training and education programs that we hope to provide our people.
Schedule
B6.
Training and education.
B6, and so does B6?
What page is that?
Page 6,
sheet?
on
Sorry.
page 16 on the big sheets.
Sorry, 16?
Page 25 on your electronic.
Yes, it addresses itself to the programs and the standards, but not to who's responsible for delivering them. Or tracking them, or what I'm looking for is protection for the corporation that the training has been done and documented.
I think that all falls under the heading of the fire chief, under his responsibility, so that's if he's basically empowered to just prevent work to whatever captain or training officer, if we have one, to do it. I think it falls on his shoulders, a fire chief, regardless whether we designate particular training underneath or not, it still falls back on the chief responsibility to see that it's done and meets the Ontario standards.
Okay, so point in here then?
Yes, go
So
ahead.
picking up on Councillor Hunter's comments, and the chief alluded to us earlier, that he's responsible for everything, then I'm looking at clause 12. The chief shall be ultimately responsible to council as set out in section 6 sub 3 of the Fire Protection and Prevention Act for the proper administration and operation of the fire department, including delivery of approved services and programs. And I guess to make me feel a little bit more comfortable, and you could say, well, training is a program, and he's responsible for all programs, so he's responsible for the training program. But personally, I would feel a little bit more comfortable if it said, including all training programs. Services, programs, and all training programs.
Added
And some-
into section
yeah,
12.
But yeah, I'm just looking for a way to get the word training into the mandate, that's all.
Chief, would that be a problem, that you could, see to put that in or not?
Through the chair, I don't see a problem.
Yes, Mr. Packwood?
Rope rescue services, the fire department's not gonna do that anymore. What about the green elevators? If they're called there, or a farm silo, what happens?
They just burn out.
Yeah, but the issue is, do we fight it or do we respond to it? And when we respond, what is the nature of our response? Protect the other buildings around it? To monitor it? What is the nature of our response? And by the way, where did you, through the chair if I may?
Yes.
To the previous speaker,
B
When you-
121,
beg pardon?
B 121.
B 121?
Yeah. It's under non.
Page 13,
Page 13, under the not provided services.
Okay, health services shall not be provided by the fire department. And it does it, any place address grain elevators, any other place? I didn't see it. Doesn't, in other words, it's silent on that. So, I think the members raised an interesting question. And I noticed as well, just again through the chair, that we make it very clear that we're not responding to water incidences, only shore-based. B 1.1, B.1.6, marine firefighting services. Marine firefighting services shall be limited to shore-based defensive fire operations only. I think that's really important to spell that out. And green elevators is an interesting one.
Your point's quite interesting. I'd just like to, if someone can help me out here, what the definition of rope rescue is?
Through the chair, that would be like a high angle type rope rescue.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
through you again, if you look at B.1.22, confined space search and rescue services, confined space search and rescue services shall not be provided by the fire department. And we operate a grain elevator, and so does that mean that we, as the owner of the elevator, find ourselves with a situation where one of our employees is, for some reason that we don't understand, in one of the bins? Do we not provide assistance, confined space search and rescue? It says not.
It says not.
Yeah.
And I guess the question I wanted to, or will ask is that the intent of the two items?
Through the chair, absolutely, that was a very good point that Mr. Packwood brought up. This section is very important for council to understand, because these are the levels of service that you're agreeing we're gonna provide, and I think it's very important to know that the services that, right now, these are services we do not provide now, and we're not able to provide based on training and equipment. Those are the decisions that is up to council. That as far as confined space rescue, every industry, if you do confined space, they are required to have their own rescue plan. It cannot fall upon the fire department.
At one time, did we do confined space rescue? I was under the impression we did. Okay, all right. That's,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'd like to get this clarified. So you're telling me if I phone 911, we got a ship in the elevator, and they're down there and they got a man there, I don't know, corn covers them up, and we gotta get down there and dig them out or try to find them. We won't go to the call, or we will go, won't we?
Through the chair, I'm sure we would go to the call and we would probably operate at an awareness level, so we would identify the hazard and try to locate the appropriate resources that are
Yeah.
trained and equipped to deal with it.
Okay, it's just that we're not gonna go, okay,
Correct.
fair enough, yeah.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, through the chair. What's the difference between, so I'm back on, like the structural B1, point 2, the structural firefighting services, and down to point C, where it's the interior fire suppression. So it gives a pretty good guideline of, when you may change, your entry or your ability to enter. What's the difference between that, say, and a confined space? Like, what's the difference between an interior fire suppression and a confined space entry?
Through the chair, very specific training and equipment.
So can you give me a little more detail to that? You're talking to,
Absolutely, everything from ropes will be involved, air monitoring, specialized breathing apparatus, probably with long hoses and such.
Explosive possibility.
For sure.
Clear?
clearer.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Under your new program you have for the youth, they're getting all their youth, we're youth firefighters or whatever. What liability does the fire department kind of come under for having these on scene with us training when these are underage people? I know you have a section in there, parents or guardians have to sign a waiver for them to be there, but in nowadays state of legal flux, waivers don't really seem to account for much if somebody gets hurt on there, whether overseeing something like how you, I guess what I'm saying is how much liability could we come into here by having these people on there?
Absolutely, and again, through the chair, that's a little more of a forward project in the future that, if resources were there, we could do that, but that would involve obviously legal opinions and then development of a program specifically for the youth, so there would be a lot of work leading up to even implementing that program, so I honestly can't answer your question at this time.
Yeah, but if I may just add to that, if you look under that junior firefighter program, it is the fire chief may establish, it's not a shall, so it's in there just as the chief alluded to, right? That if at some point you're looking at that, then you'd have to develop a program and certainly run that by council to see if there's interest in how liability and all those aspects.
Through the chair,
Go ahead.
lead up back to that, that's, I understand that the way it's wrote in there, but I just wonder if we haven't got these answers now, why do we even include it in the bylaw until we actually have those answers before we put something in that can be made possible until we have them?
Through the chair. So through the chair, because my feeling is that we really should get this bylaw out for public review. I mean, we've raised a number of issues. I don't want to be accused of ramming this through without considerable thought. So I'm prepared to move the recommendation that it come to council, but at county council, I would vote against it on first and second reading so that it didn't go to third reading at the same meeting. And that would provide an additional 30 days so that we could say, I mean, it's important that that this be widely circulated and a lot of discussion given to it. And so 30 days to allow for that process to take place. And there may be better answers that we can somehow work into the wording that we have in front of us here, especially as it pertains to the issue raised by the previous member there about silos.
Yeah.
And I'd make a distinction between a non-farm grain silo and the elevator silos that we have at the elevator, but because I think that if it's a non-farm grain silo that's on fire, I think it's important that we respond to the scene, but maybe just don't deal with the fire. But we do respond to the scene.
Yeah.
And there's a difference. And I think we should somehow be prepared to try to articulate that difference within the bylaw. Another clause or someplace in here. We want to show to our public that we're empathetic to the issue of the fire, but there's limits to how much we can do at the scene. That's the point I'm trying to get at.
I would just like to ask the chief one other question, and that is, well, actually, I'm sorry, I have two questions. One regarding the training officer. Would the training officer be someone within your department now? Or is this creating a new position?
Through the chair, my intention is that it is one of our current members.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question would be regarding the high angle and the rope. If we, and it's just for clarification here, if we responded to the call and there was, we'll say, a grain fire in an elevator, and that's all it was, I certainly understand as we have it written down. However, if there was a situation where there was a life in peril, what would be your next steps?
Just to clarify, Mr. Chair, we talked about silo fires. I don't believe there's anywhere here saying we do not respond to or extinguish silo fires. High angle rescue and confined space rescue would be basically either entering into a confined space to rescue someone or rappelling or that sort of thing on a rope to rescue someone. Fire suppression is not included in the high angle or the confined space.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misworded that. I guess my question is, if you came to one of those situations and there was a life in peril, what are your next steps? Do you call someone else, or do you do your utmost at that point?
Through the chair, obviously, we would do our best to work within the parameters outlined by council and also call in additional resources as necessary.
Okay, so then I guess that's what I was looking for, the additional.
So I guess you're the chair, right? The members are going to act to their knowledge, skill, and ability level. We wouldn't want to be asking any of our personnel, understand that it's a very difficult situation with respect to the life in peril, but too many times what's happened is that you've attempted a rescue that you're not trained to do, and now all of a sudden you have 3 or 4 that require rescue. So I understand it's a delicate situation, but I think this is part and parcel of having this bylaw passed, so that everybody is aware that, right, if you're entering in and doing confined space, you need to have a plan. You need to have a rescue plan. Very, very similar to with our pumping stations, right? When we enter those confined spaces, we have non-entry rescue plans, and we have an entry rescue plan.
Thank you both. My comfort level's a little higher now. Any other questions? Counselor?
I just, when you say that we're not, maybe we can get around this, chief, confined spaces, we do not provide. Could we maybe change it, like with the machinery and search and rescue, we shall provide service to our best effort? Would that help us?
So through the chair, it might be, a lot of these items are very specialized types of services performed. So if we're saying we're going to perform a certain level of service in a specialized end of it, that means that we have to have enough adequately trained personnel 24/7. And with our volunteer service, we're probably pushing the limits now with the services that we provide. I think that our volunteer fire service does a tremendous job, and they would probably love to take that additional on, but it's, you know, it's a pretty sophisticated and time-consuming program to get to that level, plus the ongoing certification.
But we do have, that elevator, man, we have lots and lots of opportunity where we could have problems there, though. That's my concern.
And
In our township, Jones's Rail, for instance. You know, if that ever had an explosion, are we prepared and willing to do whatever we have to? That's all I'm concerned about. I do agree with you, we need, but can we maybe look into get training for the confined, just a confined space? I mean, I just worry about boats, I always did. Guys coming in there in the bottom, something happens, it collapses. I mean, you hear it all the time. You hear it on the work, running sewers, where the ground collapses, it happens.
Yes, but I think that, through the chair, I think the key though is, and I forget which one of the previous speakers mentioned it, but at the port, for example, we're obligated to have a certain number of our people trained in confined space search and rescue. So as the employer of that entity, that's our obligation to provide that degree of protection to our employees, not the fire department. And I guess that's one of the things that I hang my hat on. The other thing is that I notice in our definitions here, we do, under definition Q, talk about limited service, and we do give ourselves the right to provide limited services in times and places where we don't get sufficient responses from our volunteers to be able to meet our what we would call our ordinary level of service. So I get some comfort out of that. But my question through the chair is, I know we're obligated as a council and as a corporation to appoint a fire chief. It says, the act says we shall appoint a fire chief. Does the act say we shall appoint a training officer? Or how does it deal with training officer? Through the chair, if I could, to the chief.
Through the chair, I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, if I can clarify?
Oh, yes.
My understanding is that either through the province or via the province or through some structure within the province, that there is a move, if it's not already in place, to mandate that fire departments must have a training officer. And I'm just wondering at where that degree of responsibility lies.
Through the chair, as far as I know, we do not have a requirement to have a training officer. However, it is recommended by various organizations that one person is responsible. We have been working with as a committee and the two deputy chiefs heading up training, but you can delegate responsibility, but unless the person has those skills to and the passion to do the job, we're not going to be as successful as we could be if we get the right person in that position. I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but we do not have any mandate, or there's no mandatory training officer position.
Mr. Mayor, 6B.1 subsection H, does that answer your question, or did that answer your question? Yeah, actually H and I.
6
Yeah, on page 16. B 6.1, and then the last two paragraphs. Does that give you a little more comfort?
training program standards. And what, that's six, that's
Yeah.
B61A,
Yeah.
and what's the other one?
I. No, H. Sorry.
B61H.
H and I.
Providing a training
Yeah.
program for
There-
fire service
yeah.
instructors and training officers that conform.
National Fire Prevention Association, 1001 and 1521. Does that answer your question?
Well, that's just the standard, it doesn't
Yeah.
say
But
where they,
Well, they have to conform to those standards.
they have to be trained
Yeah.
to that standard.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't, we have to provide the program.
Do you want to jump in?
When it's time, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Through the chair. Chief Moore, when we did the class with, or the training day with the fire marshal, they suggested that in the new bylaw that we undertake a listing of our priorities of the fire department. And I read through this, and it lists education and it lists suppression and how we're gonna deal with things, but it doesn't really prioritize them as number 1, 2, or 3. And in their model, when we listened to what they said, they talked about how a lot of rural models were no longer number 1, having suppression as their key function, that their suggestive move was towards education. And I was hopeful that I might see something in here that really prioritized what our key mandate was. I see that all the mandates are there, but I don't see any priority put to them. And I think going a little further on what the mayor's suggesting is that if we are going to make a move towards education being our number 1 priority, that training officer, and I think that they suggested for a lot of rural municipalities that would be the chief, that they provided that public education, that public training, and we get far more value out of that than some of the other methods we were using. Was there any thought put into, or any? That's what I'm reading back through all the notes that I took that day, and I was, there was quite an extensive. He talked about it quite, for quite a time.
And actually, in our old bylaw, there were a mission statement and primary goals of the fire department, and then I did not get a mission statement included in this one, because I feel it's very important to have the members involved in creating a mission statement and get that buy-in. And I just haven't gotten to that point. I would still like to update our mission statement. I just did not get it prepared and have it included in this bylaw.
So that was another question. Has this draft been through the executive, or has it been discussed with the group?
Through the chair, it's been distributed with the officers group.
To the officers group. Has it been the subject of a sit-down discussion?
I allowed them an opportunity to provide feedback.
Did you get any?
I did not.
Yeah.
Afraid that.
20 pages. Okay, Counselor, go ahead.
I just have one last comment. We spent a lot of time on confined space discussion here. One thing always been important to me as a farmer. I think we need to be very clear, regardless how people feel about it, that our fire department does not do confined space retreat. I've seen too many farmers die and too many firefighters die trying to save somebody out of a soil, that we have specialty people now in the community, harvest store, crop store, Rovovac, that have trained personnel that can be contacted in the situation of something happening in a silo. They have the equipment, they have the knowledge, they built the silos, they know how to safely enter them. And if we give our fire department that leeway that they can decide whether they want to try rescue, it's just gonna come back to haunt us for the rest, because somebody will die that shouldn't have died in it. So I think our chief's very clear in making that we do not do confined space. All our businesses, Ingredient, Greenfield, ourselves at the port, we all have our trained personnel to do that. We're mandated to do that, and they train often. Ingredient trains every month for it. So I really strongly suggest that we keep that very strongly in there, that we do not do confined space entry into these, so.
Well,
Go ahead, Mr.
so the
Mayor.
counselor makes an excellent point, and then we should make that very clear.
Yeah.
Just as we have done with a number of other services, we made it clear that we're not providing it. We should do that here. So we've
We've done
raised,
that.
yeah, we've raised quite a number of issues, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to see the recommendation go forward. And I'd like to see the bylaw get first and second reading. I'd like to see it widely distributed. I'd like to see the chief have another opportunity to talk to his officers. And if it comes back in our February meeting, and then goes to our February council meeting, we've given it good process. We've given it a lot better process than to just stamp it here tonight.
That's right. Okay, I do have a mover. Now I'm looking for a seconder. Mr. Packwood, thank you very much. So I have a mover, I have a seconder. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Carried, thank you. All right, we're now at 7C, and it's the unopened road allowance on Byers Road. There's no recommendation on this, it's an information item. So I do believe that Mr. Shaw is going to highlight this for us. If you would, Mr. Shaw, thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. Background is in May 2019, council approved the request for the use of an unopened road allowance of lot 12, concession 3, to enable farm machinery to access the owner's agricultural land. Staff had provided a standard template agreement used in the past to the owner, and the owner wished to perform work but declined to sign the agreement as currently written. Staff were directed to follow up, investigate if any work an open road allowance had already been undertaken. On December 10th, staff attended the road allowance and it noted that it appeared that there was some work done. Some ditching had occurred for approximately 135 meters from the Byers Road along the allowance. About another 40 meters, it was noted that the original culvert was in. So the work that appeared to be done, there's an illustration on the second page. It's labeled in number 1 as approximate position of the ditch that was opened, cleared. And the existing culvert is in 2. The cleared land is in 3. And this image was actually taken from a 2014 GIS satellite image. So the actual bush is under the highlighted area that's now cleared. And you can see the roadway or the unopened road allowance which traveled along that portion. There was a bit of gravel out at the Byers Road, but aside from that, the road looked to be pretty much in original condition. So a lot of four-wheel ATV tracks and so forth, but looked like sand and dirt, basically.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shaw. Questions, if any?
So, to the first question is, we've been back and forth with this owner a couple of times with this agreement. And I gather that we still don't have a signed agreement. That's correct?
That would be correct.
So, The work has been done. We don't have a signed agreement. Anybody's free now to use that unopened road allowance. And in fact, the fact that you can now access that road allowance from the north side, you can also access it from the south side, from Browsville Road. I've traveled the entire length of it, but not on not in a vehicle. I'm not sure how far I could get with my vehicle, would depend on how much water there was on it, but I traveled it in an all-terrain vehicle. So my question is, something like this, are we at any risk that somebody using the road allowance with a standard car gets themselves into trouble once they go on beyond .2?
At the time that staff attended the site, the ground was frozen, so it basically wasn't really, easy to tell how soft or what, how the drainage was working there. It looks like the field had been tile drained. There's I can't remember the name, there's a tile drain stand at one point in there, but from what it appeared, it looked like the road was in original condition. There wasn't any gravel added and didn't walk the whole length of it, but probably went for another 100 meters past 22.
So,
Supplementary, go ahead.
well, the question still stands. Because the question was, are we at any risk? So you were there in December when the ground was frozen. If you had been there in April, May, or June in the spring thaw, would there be risk then?
I don't know that I'd be qualified to say that.
Oh, that was neat.
So through the chair, there, with the unopened road allowance, there's always risk. However, with that type of an improvement, you increase the chances of somebody mistaking that for a gravel road, for instance. So, at least probably as a temporary measure, installing a sign indicating unmaintained, unopened road would be appropriate.
Can I make a suggestion, Mr. Chairman?
As an intermediate measure.
Can I make it?
Go
My
right.
suggestion would be that we have 2 large signs, such of the nature that you're talking about, created and installed, and that we send the invoice for the creation and installment of those signs to the appropriate farmer.
Any other questions? Councillor Hunter?
I guess just one, you were there in December to look at it, but I guess I take it as the average person driving down the road and you turn and look at it, would you assume that was a road now, or would you still assume that it's just an unopened road or a laneway or something going someplace to just a quick look? If you'd never seen it before, would you assume that it's a road?
If it was myself, I would not assume it's a road. Just because it's dirt and sand, but if it was gravel, it might be a different story, but
So it's still
that's
just
my
dirt,
personal
basically
opinion.
just gravel put in a hole or something to smooth it out a bit, so. I'd kind of go along with Mayor's suggestion, we just post it that for the ones, maybe the less intelligent people that would assume that a road with brush leaning over, it's a road.
So through the chair, unfortunately, if we follow the navigation directions, sometimes that would be posted as a road and nobody, right? That's just a reality nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
I got caught. Now, Mr. Otter, just to clarify your question there, does that also include the second portion of what the mayor had asked about the billing? Oh, it did. Okay. Anyway. Staff, do you have your?
Price for doing something you're not supposed to.
Mr. Chair, can you make a mover and a seconder and so that we have that direction?
Do we need a mover and a seconder for that?
I would like a mover and a seconder direction on that before we undertake.
Do we have a mover for the?
Yes, I'll move
For
it.
we do have a mover with,
I talk to him all the time, I'll second it.
and so, all in favor? And that seems to be carried, thank you. You have your mover, Mr. Sia, your mover, Mr. Sia.
What we don't have is the motion.
Yeah, or the motion, right. Okay, moving on to 7B, which is also an information item. There's no recommendation on this. This is the traffic volume and speed counters on County Road 2 east of Cardinal. You have a briefing note in front of you. And Mr. Shaw, are you going to highlight some of this for us?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Through the chair, Public Works Department were asked to install traffic counters on County Road 2 east of Cardinal. Counters were located eastbound in the 60-kilometer zone at the 80-kilometer transition and further east at the 80-kilometer zone. This ongoing request was in response to concerns raised with vehicle speed and pedestrian safety in the area. The data was tabulated in eastbound direction between December 2nd and December 15th, 2019. The attached tables provide summary of data collected by location, and table below compares the data between the three locations. If you, I refer you to the GIST diagram, basically the sections, it's kind of hard to define, but just past Flat Street, there's a small break at point 1. So it was at the start of point 1, the small break, which is 337 County Road 2, the first road on the corner of Flat Street, and then on past it to the end of section 2 is where the monitors were placed. The only conclusion to be drawn from this data is that the motorists are not respecting the 60-kilometer-per-hour zone.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Open it for questions. Deputy Mayor, I know you want to get in here.
I'm not hugely, well, one question, I read the note and it says we'll be forwarding it on to the OPP. Is there much other, is there much, I know there's the citizens in that area have approached me lots of times about it, brought it forward. It's pretty obvious that it's an issue that they're correct with their observations. What do we do now?
I'm not sure in this instance because it is a county road. So I think possibly we could try and set up a meeting with the county and maybe the OPP if we could get them together and say there's an issue here. As far as the speed limit, I think that would be the county's responsibility on their road. And you may get into another incident if you pursue this. Let's say they dropped it to 50 kilometers an hour to match further in town's 50. And then you have that same sort of incident in on the county road in Spencerville with the, that you're get an extended area. So just, that's about all I could offer.
Yes, go ahead.
Just a quick follow-up through the chair. So do we forward the result, and maybe I missed that it goes to counties as well, but it does go to counties as well as OPT?
I will note through the chair, if I may, it has been noted by staff that the OPP are checking that area a little more. They tend to park at Flat Street. I don't know if somebody had called them and complained or whatever, but I had a comment the other day that they'd noticed more presence on the Flat Street. And I'm not sure what the leeway is, what they allow to, can you go 9 miles an hour over, or I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, the data shows that it's 85% of the time somebody's doing 20 kilometers an hour or more over, and that's pretty telling that nobody's respecting the speed limit.
Councillor Hunter, you wanted to get in?
I just, reading over the statistics here, I just can't figure some of them out, because we started off in the first one, we're in the 80 kilometer zone, and we had 4,453 vehicles. Then we go back into the first 60 kilometer zone, we got 7,700 vehicles, and then the next one we got 8,400 vehicles. How do we lose 4,000 vehicles going from the 60 to the 80 zone? These stats don't seem to make sense to me. You're going out of Cardinal, and all of a sudden between the 60 and the 80 zones, we lost 4,000 vehicles.
Same time frame?
Same time frame,
Yeah.
same report period.
So if I may, and I probably am incorrect, but the counters were not set up in the same direction of flow. One was eastbound, one was westbound.
This says eastbound.
They say all eastbound.
No, I believe they were all eastbound, that's what I was told, so.
We'll have to verify that.
And the way I read it is that we're going eastbound
Yeah.
from, I think the house number is 403.
Yes.
And we're going eastbound from 403 to 337 to 233. And as we go eastbound, we go from a 60-kilometer zone to a 60-kilometer zone to an 80-kilometer zone. So you would expect people to be increasing their speed as they get further east. But I'm with Councillor Hunter, how do we lose that many vehicles? I mean, the time frame seems, the report period is the same, 12:02 to 12:15. The hours seem to be the same. Now, are the reports generated on the same day? Yeah,
No,
the
sorry,
reports
that
are
might be
generated-
some of the difference, some of them were moved, actually.
What?
So they were moved, because originally they were set up in front of 403, and then I believe it's moved down to 337, and then captured down at the end. There was, or so these two different
Should get higher
days.
as they go down.
Pardon me?
Should get higher as it goes down.
The speed should, but not the house numbers.
No, I think where the confusion is that at first it was at Flat Street, right?
Before Flat Street. but-
Before Flat Street,
Yes.
and then it went to like the edge of Sawmill Creek.
Right, so.
But it
so
was
what I-
gone at Flat Street.
So what I'm saying is that the date, the reporting dates are not correct.
Yeah.
The sign moved.
Yeah.
So you didn't lose 3,000
Yeah,
vehicles? That's, we'll have to verify that because.
I think
The sign definitely.
to get accurate information, if we're gonna compare how quick they're jumping up, you'd have to have the signs all at the same day in the different place, all in the different places at the same time, and see how
Same time.
quick they're jumping. We can't take one place one day and say, okay, they're jumping 30 kilometers an hour, and then 2 days later, go down, move an hour and say, now they're only jumping 20 kilometers an hour. Get a steady flow, I think you have to have them all continuous thing to see where they're picking their speed up at.
there's a hill there.
It's pretty clear.
That's,
Yeah, that's for sure.
That's there at the corner.
or a gully, I should say.
Okay, moving along, is there any other questions? Hearing nothing, okay, being an information item to staff up the necessary information to proceed.
We'll do some clarification with that report and then forward that on.
Good, thank you. Okay, we're now at 7E. There is a recommendation attached to this. This is the QMS, Quality Management System. And there is recommendation in two parts. You've had a chance to do the briefing note. I'll open the floor for questions. Hearing none. Could I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Dillabaugh moving and Councillor Hunter seconding. I'll call the question. All in favor of the recommendations? Carried, thank you. 7F, the transition of the Blue Box program. Again, this is, there's no recommendation. This is an information item.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm not treating this as an information item, although I see there's no recommendation. But I'm looking at the last paragraph on page 1. AMO is asking that council pass a resolution outlining the municipality's preferred date to transition from the Blue Box program to full producer responsibility by June 30th, 2020. Well, that's construction of that sentence is a little bit off, but they want the resolution by June the 30th, 2020. They don't want the full producer responsibility by June 2020, but so the council, the resolution must outline the following. The council's preferred date to transition, the rationale for the transition date, whether the municipality is interested in potentially continuing to provide services, and key contacts. So my reading of what this briefing note says is that that paragraph says it all. And I'm asking, through the chair if I may, to have staff bring forward a resolution that deals with this request from AMO. That's what we're being asked to do, and the resolution that comes forward should deal with all four of those issues.
But not at this meeting.
Well, no, I don't want the resolution at this meeting, but I think we should see it for the February meeting.
Correct. Any other questions?
Well, I agree with the mayor there when I read it too. Like I think it's a good information item, but I think one of the things we should concentrate on here that, in my opinion, our takeover date should coincide with when our contract with our waste management concludes, which I think is in another year.
So through the chair, the reason that there is no recommendation and not a part of the report is because this is a very fluid situation with respect to that, and there's information coming in on a weekly basis that we're trying to filter through. I would say that in a circumstance where our contract was expiring in 2024, it's probably would be fairly easy to say that our preferred transition date would be 2024. Right, and move through that system. Unfortunately, our contract ends February 2022. So we're going to have to extend that contract. And at this stage, still processing to try to bring back additional information for committee so that they can determine, advantages to, extending it 1 year or potentially extending it out 2 to 3 years. One of the difficulties is you probably don't want to be the first to do this transition. I expect that even though we have probably 3 years to get to that point, you're going to be, there's going to be a lot of gaps in items, so.
Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
Okay, so I think we have to understand what's happening here. And the key is in the very first 5 words of that last paragraph. AMO is asking that council pass a resolution. Here's what's happening. The province is trying to set up a process to transition to producer full responsibility. The negotiations are going on and on and on and on. And AMO is saying to its members, our 444 municipalities, we want a resolution from you to know where you stand on this issue. Give us a resolution. So we would give them a resolution saying that our preferred date is February 2022 because that's when our existing contract ends. That's the rationale for our transition date. Whether the municipality is interested in potentially continuing to provide services, yes, we're interested in continuing to provide services, providing that we're recompensed for it. And the key contacts, name the CAO. There's our answer. We're only sending the answer to AMO, and they want these by June the 30th, so that AMO's got some ammunition to go to the province and say, look at, the municipalities want to get this thing going. It's time to end all these discussions. Let's get going here. That's why they're asking for the resolution. Don't kid yourself for 1 minute that the resolution is going to make the transfer happen in that date.
Well, they say 2025 before
Exactly.
maybe a third of them.
Yeah. Right, but we've got a good rationale for saying February 2022. We've also got a good rationale for saying 2024. We have a contract that ends in 2022. We're only prepared to extend it for 2 years. You know, I mean, I think all that's happening here is that AMO is asking for ammunition.
So through the chair, just to clarify that a little bit more, what they're asking is the preferred date between January 2023 and 2025. So, with all due respect, saying that our transition date is February, we want February 2022, they've sort of already set up the program from January 2021 to December 2022 for the producers to prepare to do this takeover. The premise is that hopefully if municipalities submit and it happens to turn out that it's relatively split in that 2023, 2024, 2025 where contracts are coming due and it's relatively smooth. What we really want is the choice to be at the municipality instead of bringing in a consultant for them to choose those transition dates. So all I'm trying to do is get a little bit more information, bring it forward in March with the plan for the resolution to come forward in March, and we submit in April, well in advance of the June 2020. We're just trying to get as much information to you to make an informed decision.
Thank you, Mr. Sia. Mr. Shaw, do you have anything else to add? Any highlights on your part here?
No, that's pretty much covered it. It was.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, that's fine. We're going to, staff, you have the information you need. We'll move on. We're now at 7G, which is the 2020 Industrial Park Water Budget. There is a recommendation on this. Recommendation reads, the committee recommends that council maintain the current fee structure to increase reserves. Excuse me. You've had a chance to go over the briefing note. Are there any questions regarding this? I see Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so this is the water budget, and I guess one of the first things that I look at here is I'm looking at the revenues budgeted for 2019 and actual for 2019. And so from a budget to actual, there's a $10,000 shortfall in revenues. And I don't see where the briefing note addresses that shortfall in revenue. So I'd like to have an explanation for the shortfall in revenue. That's the first thing, and then I have a couple other questions.
Mr. Shaw, do you want to field that one?
I would say that December billing is not included in this as of yet. We would have billed out later on in December. I want to say. Sorry. Actually, early January for December. So December's revenue is not in there. It's not received yet.
Okay, I can't argue with that, so I can only deal with the information that I've got in front of me, and I don't see an as-at date. I see a report date, the date that the report was generated by the computer, but on the title, I don't see as-at. So I'll accept that for now, but it's showing that even at that $10,000 shortfall in revenue, there's a $29,000 revenue over expenses number.
Correct.
But again, I guess I can't assume that the expenses are all accurate either. So I'm being asked to approve a budget that leaves the rate the same, and I guess I can draw the inference that that 2019 will come out either roughly in balance or slightly ahead. So the next question comes to the paragraph that says financial considerations. The 2019 Industrial Park water budget included a transfer from the Industrial Park Water Reserve Fund in the amount of $18,000 to offset a sewage collection system deficit. And I thought we had discussed this earlier and said, no, we don't wanna get these two systems subsidizing one another. And I thought we had agreed to that at an earlier meeting. And now I see that we did take money out of the water reserve, and I've got the reserve and the reserve fund report that we got on January the 10th, and I can't see, of course, I don't have a full picture here, industrial park water. I don't see where there's been money transferred out, although the briefing note says that there has been.
Last year.
Yeah, but I've got a reserve and reserve funds report that we got on October the 11th. And then I've got the one that we got on January the 10th, which I understand is not audited and it's pre-budget. And what I don't have is the activity. The treasurer hasn't supplied me with the activity that occurred in those reserve funds in that period between October the 11th and January the 10th. The only activity I see is the interest going into the fund. I don't see the transfer coming out of the fund. So I don't see the activity there. But I'm talking to the larger question that I thought we had already resolved the issue of not using the one fund the water to subsidize the wastewater. We'll deal with the wastewater in a minute, Mr. Chair.
Right. We will.
So through the chair, I believe, I remember that discussion. I can't remember what the conclusion that we came to at this time, but I believe that we did do a transfer over for that year, but with the 2019 budget, we were looking to draw down from the wastewater reserve and not do those transfers from one system to another moving forward. But I will confirm that.
Okay, so with that proviso, I'm prepared to accept the budget as it's presented, even though I don't have, well, let's just deal with it.
Do I have any other questions or concerns around the table? Okay, I'm looking for a mover and looking for a seconder.
I'll move, there's nobody else.
And second, Deputy Mayor Deschamps. I'll call the question. All in favor for the recommendation?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. We're now at 7H, and this is the 2020 Industrial Park Sewer Budget. And the mayor did warn us that we would be talking about this one, and we are. There is a recommendation, 2 parts to it. Now, Mr. Shaw, would you like to highlight the briefing note here?
Sure. Through the chair. The industrial park sewer system is a small network made up of 11 industrial users. The 3 annual expenses for the system are insurance, transfer to reserve fund, and the township's portion of operating and maintenance at the Prescott Sewer Treatment Plant. These O&M costs make up approximately 94% of the annual budget. See section 45 of bylaw 2014-25. Individual sewer charges for EC businesses are based on individual potable water consumption. There's no metering of sewage is undertaken. So basically a cubic meter of water in is equivalent to, considered equivalent to a cubic meter of sewage out. 2019 budget anticipated the total flow volume approximately 33,000 meters cubed based on the 2018 final total. The actual 2019 flow volumes trending closer to 28,000 cubic meters. Sewage revenues for the system will be approximately $5,000 less than expected, resulting in an overall deficit of $11,000 when compared to 2019 revenue. Dust Park Wastewater Reserve Fund has a pre-audit 2019 year-end balance of $22,815.98. To reduce the probability of depleting reserves further, 2020 budget proposes a 40-cent per meter cube increase from $0.054 to $1.45 per cubic meter in the consumption rate charge to reduce the deficit and put the township in a position to begin increasing the reserve fund. Recommendation, that committee recommends that council increase the consumption rate by 40 cents per cubic meter and direct staff to prepare a bylaw to adopt, establish, and impose the rates for user of the industrial park sewer system.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. I'm going to start at this end of the table down here. Are there any questions regarding the briefing note? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Through the chair, if I can. We're through the proposed increase, the .20 and the .40. Will that get us? That'll cover the amount that's been pulled from reserves, but will it allow us to build a reserve?
A deficit and a small gain on the reserve fund.
Small B.
A small amount to transfer to reserve after the deficit's taken care of.
About $439.
Yeah, but setting up for better the next year.
Right.
Okay, coming to this end of the table, Councillor Dillabaugh.
No, I'm good.
Mr. Mayor.
So the recommendation, I'd like to see one change to the recommendation. Increase the consumption rate by 40 cents per cubic meter to, what will it then be?
$1.454 per cubic meter. From
0.454.
1.54.
Okay, I'd just like to see that to be part of the recommendation. That's the first thing. And this budget that I have in front of me, I'm assuming that that is with the new rate in effect?
That is correct.
Okay, it says 40 cents per cubic meter increase, not 45 cents.
The 45 cents comes from the existing cost of $1.
Sorry,
$5.
Sorry, my error. It goes to $1.45 instead of
105.
Correct.
105.
Yes.
Yes, my mistake. Okay, but is it, what quantity is it predicated upon? What quantity is the 52,000 predicated on?
It is predicated on the 33,000.
Okay, but we already saw that the 2019 budget anticipated 33,000 cubic meters, but it actually came in at 28,000, and which resulted in a $5,000 less revenue. Now, if we're increasing by 40 cents, but we're still predicating on a 33,000, so you know, I can't see where we're going to gain much, because we're still, especially if the flow comes in at 28 again.
Through the chair, if I might, but there will also, there's an existing deficit of $11,000, so the increase is covering that $11,000 plus the 5,000.
No, that doesn't deal with my revenue. It doesn't deal with my revenue question.
So if I may, through the chair, with respect to the expenses, so we've noticed a drop in the consumption, but we've also noticed a drop in our wastewater treatment plant contract.
Still doesn't address my revenue question.
Well, if we're dropping about the same amount in revenue with the same amount of expense in the contract.
Well, then show us those numbers.
Well, as soon as we get the final invoice from the Prescott Sewage Treatment Plant, we'll certainly insert that in. But with the final flows that we received, we're going to be in and around 62,000 for respect to the wastewater treatment plant contract. If I'm going by the 2019 projections at our last board meeting.
You're going to be looking at what?
About a contract cost of around 62,000.
62,000?
Yeah.
Okay, so
That's 4,750. That's an expense.
okay, so, to the chair again, if I can, I mean, I'm still not comfortable with what I'm hearing. I mean, the reason I'm not comfortable with it is because I think that the new rate, $1.45.4, applied to the 33,000 cubic meters is, we know it's not gonna be accurate based on what we learned in 2019. We may also get a reduction in the expense side, but, I mean, and I have no problem taking the expense side, the 2020 draft budget expense side, down to 62, which will reflect what's happened. What CAO tells us, it looks like it'll be this year, but then we've got to adjust the revenue number at the top.
So, through the chair, I guess I'm looking at it, if we're increasing 40 cents a cubic meter, it's a cubic meter, whether the cubic meter is 28,000 cubic meters or 33,000 cubic meters, you're increasing 40 cents on each cubic meter. Based on an estimate, I don't know, the water consumption fluctuates throughout, so it's basically just leaving it at the 33,000. I think this was a low year in consumption versus what typical consumption is.
5,000 difference in cubic meters times $1.45 per cubic meter is about $7,500 difference in revenue.
Make a comment? Sure.
Go ahead, Counselor.
I see where mayor's coming from here, and I see where CEO's coming from here too, but I think we're working with basically the same type of numbers here. It's just the system that we're looking at doing it, and I kinda agree, we're getting more money coming in and the expenses may go down, but I think our whole system that we should be basing on when we're forecasting these budgets is what actually happened the year before. If we only took in only had 28,000 cubic meters that we charged on, I think that's what we should base our $1.40 on, of how much revenue we're going to win. If we happen to go 30,000, we're gonna have more money left over, but we're not gonna be surprised at the end. It's maybe gonna show on our budget that we're running close, that we haven't got a whole lot left over, but we're not gonna get surprised next year, because I think we learned in the Cardinal system when we went to meters and stuff and we increased fees, every time we increase fees, our consumption drops as people start to try to be more economical about what they're using. So if we jump at 40 cents, which is basically about a 30% increase, I anticipate, if anything, we won't be getting more volume used. We're likely getting a little less volume used. Now, granted, I may be off on that figure because it's in industries that's using it, and sometimes they can't really adjust much more than where they are. But I think if they've adjusted right now, that they're down to 28, maybe we base it on 29, but I don't think we should be going all the way back up to the 33, so.
Thanks for helping me explain that.
Okay, any other questions?
I'd like to see it revised.
Okay.
And, you know, the revision, I guess my issue is this: we try to do these early enough in the season that we capture the first billing period. And if this comes back to us in February with a revised budget, and we approve it in February, will we capture the first billing cycle? We won't.
You could make it retroactive, effective January first. If I may, through the chair?
So,
The recommendation is to increase the consumption rate by 40 cents and direct staff to prepare the bylaw. So in my view, the recommendation to go forward with the 40-cent increase could be considered, and the bylaw, when it comes forward on the 27th of January, would have the revised budget attached.
Good point. And we're not actually dealing with the actual approval of the budget, we're just approving the rate. Yeah, that, I'm glad to see the clerk clarify that.
I think,
Yeah.
I think we're improving the expense part of the budget and stuff, but the revenue's gonna, all our budgets, our revenues fluctuate, so.
So,
So that makes sense.
so, the mayor's recommendation was that we add in, under number 1, increase the consumption rate by 40 cents per cubic meter to bring, to equal 1.454 cents per cubic meter.
Yes.
Is staff comfortable with that wording? All right, I need a mover, Councillor Hunter, and I need a seconder, Councillor Dillabaugh. I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, staff. We'll move on to 7I, and it is the condition of T4 snowplow and the 2020 plan. There is a recommendation, and it is recommendation, that committee recommends that council authorize replacement of T4's turbo to facilitate a backup plow for the remainder of the 2020 winter. I'll open the floor to questions. Go ahead.
Can Mr. Hunter help me? What's the
I
word? Turbo charger?
Turbo?
Well,
Turbo
if it
charger.
increases the power of the truck, it really can't operate without it, with any plowing efficiency, but, I think it's a good recommendation. We have another truck that's a very old truck that we're in the budget to replace this year. They both went down last year at the same time, that we were short 2 trucks at one point. The other truck could go down, this one I think is a backup. We're gonna get our money out of it if it goes to auction, because you're gonna get absolutely nothing for it if you send a truck that doesn't run to auction. Put 5,000 in it, their estimates should get 20,000 plus. I agree with that. I've followed these trucks for a number of years. It's a plow truck, depending on when we auction it and what the contracts go out for. Yes, it's an older truck, but city contract plows, they're willing to throw 25 or 30,000 at an operating plow truck for, same as we're doing, as a standby truck for their number 1 trucks, that something goes down, they can complete the contract for keeping Walmart plowed or keeping somebody else plowed out, so I don't think it's money threw away. I think we easily recoup it back when we go to sell the truck, so.
Excellent.
Plus it
And
shows in the CBR, it shows good maintenance, that you haven't let something sit and left it, so.
I just have a question, and Mr. Shaw, I'll get back to you in just a moment, but perhaps you can help me with my question. The price of the turbo, which is approximately $5,000, and HST will bring it up to about 55. Now, is this turbo an aftermarket turbo, or would this be coming back from the dealer?
It's through the dealer, I'm not sure whether it was aftermarket or not.
Oh, okay.
I'd have to look at the bill.
The quotation came from the dealer.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions at the table? Okay, I'm looking for a mover and I'm looking for a seconder. Mr. Packwood for moving and Councillor Hunter for seconding. I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now, we move on to councillor inquiries and notice of motion. Do we have any tonight? Councillor, thank you, but not yet.
Where's the chair, sorry? I have a few, if you don't mind, with the chair to go through.
Go ahead.
It's all, three of them are with their South Edwardsburg Community Hall. We're renting it out a lot more now with Windmill Breweries. It's about another 27, 28 times this year that we're having rentals. And we gotta have somebody on staff for emergencies. Once we rent this, no heat, plug toilet, etc. We have no staff, we have no phone numbers, nothing. So Windmill Breweries rent it. They're not responsible if they come and say that we have a plug toilet. So we have to have that taken care of as soon as possible. And our walkways, they gotta be shoveled and salted the date that South Edwardsburg Community Hall was rented. It's not getting done. I was there Sunday and it was terrible with the walkways coming in and so on. So if it's rented on that Sunday or Thursday, if it snows, we gotta make sure that's clean and ready for the people to come in. And same as with the South Edwardsburg Community Hall, I'm getting a lot of people coming to me if we could have change tables in both washrooms. A lot of our functions now, we're having a lot of families, like smaller children, 2, 3, and the vanities sometimes isn't big enough to change diapers, I guess. I'm not into that, but this is what I've been told, so if we could look at that. 2 change tables in each bathroom. The other one I have is, we found the dehumidifier that was from the old, from the Cardinal Arena, and it's on a capital budget for a new one at $15,000. I'd like to see if we can't get this inside to look at and get it ready for the 2020 summer when we put our ice in. If we can take care of that, I appreciate it. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor.
So I think we have to follow up here.
Yes.
So there's 3 issues with regard to the South Ed Community Hall rentals,
There is, yes,
and there's 1 issue with regard to that dehumidifier.
correct.
I'm looking for direction as to how to get those concerns action.
I was going to ask staff for help on that. You've heard the concerns. I just have a follow-up question to Councillor Dillabuz. When we rent that hall or any other area, do we not have someone go in to perform a custodial cleanup and check to make sure the washrooms are functional and things like that?
So if I may through the chair, we've noted some of these items, and the facilities manager will be returning from holidays next week. We'll touch base with them. I would think that like with respect to the sidewalk item on Sunday, there wasn't any place that I know of that there wasn't a bit of ice with that winter storm.
No, you're right, I agree, but at least shovel it for them. I mean, there was no shoveling, and it happened on New Year's Eve too. So, that's all.
But we'll
Just rent it.
certainly-
Yes, I agree with you.
So, but
I agree, everybody
we'll
said working hard.
we'll certainly make note of those, and we'll hope to get some answers.
Thank you. Does that satisfy your question, Mr. Mayor?
Okay, well, it deals with the South Ed Center issues.
Yeah, and the
Now,
Cardinal.
how can we deal with the dehumidifier? And I think we need to know what shape that dehumidifier is in. The counselor has pictures of it here, and it was taken out of the old Cardinal Arena. I think we should at least have a look at it. I mean, I can't understand why it would be completely dysfunctional, but it may be.
Well, it was working during the last throes of the old arena, that I know for sure. But, so, Mr. CAO, would it be fair to assume that staff will look into this and see if that dehumidifier can be used?
Yes, as I indicated, upon the return of the facilities manager, we'll start to look into those items.
Thank you.
Do some follow-up.
Good, thank you. Thank you. Any other inquiries or notice of motion? You have a question, Mr.
Yeah, I got one sort of, it's a follow-up to this meeting. So, we've seen the two budgets for the industrial park water and industrial park wastewater. Can we get follow-up accurate information for the next meeting? So that we see those budgets in a more, by that time, we should have our actual expenditures and our actual revenues. And maybe by the February meeting, which is what, the third Monday of February? Yeah, we should have accurate revenue and expenditure numbers and a new 2020 budget. I'd just like to see it come back on the table, that's all.
Just a follow-up question to that, Mr. Mayor, thank you. We also have two scheduled budget meetings prior to the February meeting. Would those figures be?
Well, we have two people not at those budget meetings.
Oh, correct, okay.
So, through the chair, my preference would be if we have all that information, we'll bring that forward at the next PW meeting in February.
Perfect, okay. So H and G and H will be brought back. Or the information for G and H. Thank you. Anything else? Yes, Councillor?
So on the recreation department, a couple of months or more ago, I requested about putting pay-as-you-go heaters in the Spencer Arena, and requested a costing of what it costs to do it. I still haven't seen any costing reports of what it would cost to consider doing it, so I don't think we can make any kind of a capital decision unless we have some numbers of what it would actually cost.
So through the chair, we did forward the report, and yes, that was my error in not following up prior to Mr. Spencer leaving. I didn't get that information, so I expect that he has it, and we didn't touch base before he left on holiday, so we should hopefully have that at one of the next budget meetings.
Yeah, I saw the report.
So-
Yes.
My apologies.
But I think what you did circulate was the little report on what was happening at the Cardinal Arena with regard to revenue and expenditures.
Yes, I believe that report was
Yeah, we got that.
Just
2016 or
Yeah.
something of that nature.
So,
Yes.
when you bring the other, can you bring that back as well? Because I've lost my copy of it, I just recall it in my head. Not very well.
Okay. Anything else? No other notice of motion? I'm going to move on then to the mayor's report. Mr. Mayor, do you have a report tonight?
No report tonight.
No report tonight? Is this a first?
Yep.
No, I won't ask that.
Well, I didn't want to blather on.
Okay, we're at item 10. It's question period. I see no faces in the gallery. Does staff have any questions? Hearing none, we'll move on. We do have a closed session tonight. Do we have a mover to go into closed session?
Myself, Deputy Mayor Deschamps, Committee of the Whole, proceed into closed session at 8:24 p.m. in order to address matters pertaining to proposed or pending acquisition or disposal of land by the municipality or local board, specifically special sewer lateral crossing, and litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administration tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, specifically minutes of closed session dated November 18th, 2019.
Thank you. Okay, is the camera on?
We have to call the vote.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Okay,
So,
now we
me first.
approve.
Now we're in open session.
We're in open
You could
session.
Could call for the motion to approve the minutes
And I
of
would
the
like,
closed session.
I would like the motion to approve the minutes of the closed session.
And that's me. Moved by myself, second by Mayor Seah, that the committee of the whole approves the minutes of closed session dated November 18th, 2019.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
All right, so the next would be moved by myself, seconded by Councillor John Hunter, that committee recommends that council authorize the purchase of lands in Spencerville in accordance with the closed session discussion, and that the mayor and the clerk be authorized to execute the necessary documents.
Thank you. You've heard the recommendation. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Carried. Now, what's left is adjournment.
Well, wait a minute now. Are you sure?
Well, that's what it says right here.
Okay.
Moved by myself, second by Mayor Seah, that the committee of the whole does now adjourn at 8:43 p.m.
All in favor?
Aye.